step behind the lens, and look beyond the boundaries of ordinary storytelling. Join us as we explore the defining moments in history, capturing the exact seconds that changed our world forever.
Sir, you need to leave right now. We've had multiple complaints about you just sitting around here making people uncomfortable.
I'm just reading. This is a public library. I'm sitting here quietly with my books and my laptop.
I don't care what you're doing. You need to leave now, or you're going to be arrested.
The library security camera captured everything, every word, every violation. Officer Daniel Reeves had no idea the man he was about to handcuff wasn't just any library patron. He was Marcus Webb, a civil rights attorney with 18 years of experience, a former federal prosecutor, and a lawyer who had successfully sued 3 police departments for racial profiling. What happened next would cost Reeves his career, cost the city $3.8 million, and trigger a Department of Justice investigation that would expose systemic racism in the Seattle Police Department. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? If you believe you can be arrested for reading while black, hit that subscribe button. This story gets even more shocking. Seattle Central Library sits on 4th Avenue in downtown Seattle. Glass and steel architecture, 11 floors, Bure spot for Europe. Massive reading rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It's not just a library, it's a community space where students study, professionals work remotely, homeless individuals find shelter, and citizens access information. The 3rd floor reading room is the quietest. Rows of study tables, individual carrels with desk lamps, computer terminals along the walls, signs everywhere. Silence, please. This is where Marcus Webb chose to work that Tuesday afternoon in March. Marcus Webb was 43 years old, Harvard Law School, top 10% of his class. 5 years as an assistant U.S. attorney prosecuting civil rights violations and federal crimes. 13 years in private practice specializing in police misconduct, employment discrimination, and constitutional law. He'd won landmark cases. $4.2 million settlement against Portland PD for wrongful arrest. $5.7 million against Tacoma PD for excessive force. $2.9 million against Spokane PD for racial profiling. He'd argued before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. He'd been quoted in the New York Times, Washington Post, and on NPR about police reform. He taught constitutional law as an adjunct professor at University of Washington Law School. Bar associations invited him to speak. Civil rights organizations consulted him on policy. At 43, Marcus Webb was exactly what he'd worked to become, one of the Pacific Northwest's most respected civil rights attorneys. That Tuesday afternoon, Marcus had a deposition scheduled for the next morning. Police excessive force case. He needed to review case law, prepare questions, organize exhibits. His office was being renovated. Workers everywhere, construction noise making concentration impossible. So he went to the library at 2:15 p.m. He found a table in the 3rd floor reading room near the windows, natural light, quiet. He unpacked his laptop, his legal pad, 3 case law books he'd checked out from the law library, and a coffee he'd bought downstairs. He wore khakis, a button-down shirt, and a blazer. Professional, but casual. He looked like what he was, a lawyer working at a library. For 30 minutes he read peacefully. He took notes on his legal pad. He highlighted passages in the case, law books. He typed on his laptop. He sipped his coffee. He bothered no one. He spoke to no one. He was completely absorbed in his work. But to one person in that library, Marcus Webb's presence was a problem, and that person decided to do something about it. Walked into her, Jennifer Hollis was 52 years old. She'd been a reference librarian at Seattle Central Library for 14 years. She considered herself a guardian of library standards. She believed libraries should be quiet, orderly, respectable places. And lately, she'd become increasingly frustrated with what she called undesirable people using the library. Homeless individuals sleeping at tables, teenagers being loud, people who, in her mind, didn't belong. That afternoon, Jennifer noticed Marcus, a black man sitting alone at a table with books and a laptop. She watched him for 10 minutes. Something about him made her uncomfortable. She couldn't articulate what. He wasn't being loud. He wasn't bothering anyone. But he just didn't look right to her. He looked like he was casing the place. Maybe planning to steal laptops. Maybe dealing drugs. Her assumptions were entirely based on race, though she would never admit that to herself. Have you ever been profiled in a library or bookstore? Type yes or no in the comments. Jennifer approached the circulation desk where her colleague was working. There's a guy on the 3rd floor who's been there a while. I think he's loitering. Her colleague looked up. Is he causing problems? Not exactly, but he doesn't look like he's really here to read. He looks suspicious. Her colleague shrugged. If he's not causing problems, probably just leave him alone. Jennifer wasn't satisfied. She went to her supervisor. There's a suspicious individual on the 3rd floor. I think we should call security. The supervisor asked the same questions. Is he being disruptive? Threatening anyone? Violating library policy? Jennifer couldn't point to any specific violation, but she insisted something felt wrong. The supervisor, wanting to avoid conflict with a longtime employee, agreed to call building security. Building security arrived 10 minutes later. Officer Martin Chen had worked library security for 6 years. He was calm, professional, trained in de-escalation. He asked Jennifer to show him the suspicious person. They walked to the 3rd floor. Jennifer pointed at Marcus, still sitting quietly, reading his case law book, taking notes. "That's him. He's been here over 30 minutes. Officer Chen observed for a moment. He's just reading. What's the problem? He doesn't look like he belongs here." Chen, who was Asian American and had experienced his own share of profiling, immediately understood what was happening. "Ma'am, this is a public library." "Everyone belongs here. I'm not going to bother someone who's reading quietly." Jennifer's face flushed. "Fine, I'll call the police." Chen tried to stop her. "That's not necessary. He's not breaking any laws." Jennifer walked away and called 911 anyway. Seattle Police Dispatch received the call at 3:02 p.m. There's a suspicious individual at Seattle Central Library, 3rd floor. Caller reports he's been loitering for an extended period and making patrons uncomfortable. What's he doing that's suspicious? Just sitting there. He looks out of place. Is he threatening anyone? Being disruptive? Not according to the caller, but she insists something's wrong. A unit was dispatched. Officer Daniel Reeves responded. Officer Daniel Reeves was 36 years old, 9 years with Seattle PD, and in those 9 years, he'd compiled a record that should have ended his career long ago. 16 complaints. 16. 12 specifically alleged racial profiling or excessive force against people of color. 6 sustained with written reprimands and mandatory retraining. 10 closed as not sustained despite witness statements. The pattern was clear and documented. Reeves saw black and brown people as inherently suspicious, inherently criminal, inherently threatening. 4 years earlier, Reeves stopped a black teenager skateboarding in a park, detained him for an hour, searched his backpack without consent, found nothing. The teenager's father was a city councilman. Complaint filed, sustained. Reeves received a written reprimand. 2 years ago, Reeves responded to a noise complaint at an apartment complex. When he arrived, he found a group of black college students having a study session. He demanded IDs from everyone, ran warrants checks, threatened to arrest them for disturbing the peace, even though neighbors said the noise complaint was about a different unit. Students filed complaints, not sustained. 6 months ago, Reeves stopped an Asian American driver for a traffic violation. During the stop, he made comments about the driver's English and asked where he was really from. The driver was born in Seattle, spoke perfect English, and recorded the entire encounter. Complaint filed, sustained. Reeves received mandatory diversity training. But despite 16 complaints over 9 years, Reeves remained on patrol because the system prioritized protecting officers over protecting communities. When Reeves received the library call, his mind immediately constructed a narrative. Suspicious person at library, probably homeless, probably on drugs, probably trespassing. He arrived at 3:14 p.m., parking his patrol car at the main entrance. He walked into the library, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and found Jennifer waiting. She pointed across the reading room. "That's him. The one in the blazer at the table by the windows." Reeves looked. He saw a black man sitting alone with books and a laptop. In Reeves's biased mind, that confirmed the complaint. Black man. Public space. Obviously doesn't belong. Reeves walked directly toward Marcus's table. Marcus was reading a Supreme Court decision about Fourth Amendment search and seizure when he became aware of someone standing next to his table. He looked up. A police officer, arms crossed, staring down at him. "Can I help you?" "Officer, you need to leave." "Excuse me? This is a public library. I'm studying. Multiple complaints about you loitering, making people uncomfortable." Marcus blinked, confused. "Loitering? I've been here 30 minutes reading legal case law. I'm an attorney preparing for a deposition. I have books checked out. I have my laptop. I'm not loitering. I don't care what you claim to be. You need to leave now." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He recognized what was happening. This wasn't about loitering or complaints. This was about a black man in a space where someone decided he didn't belong. "Officer, I'm not leaving. I'm a library patron engaged in legitimate research. I'm not violating any policy. I'm not disturbing anyone. I have every right to be here. This is your last warning. Leave or you're being arrested." Marcus made a decision. He could leave, avoid confrontation, let this violation go unchallenged, or he could assert his rights, document this injustice, and hold the system accountable. He chose assertion. Should libraries train staff to recognize racial bias before calling police? Let me know in the comments. Officer, what's your name and badge number? Reeves. 3174. Officer Reeves, I'm Marcus Webb. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've been sitting here quietly for 30 minutes reading case law for a deposition tomorrow. I'm not loitering. I'm not disturbing anyone. I'm exercising my right to use a public library. If you arrest me for this, you're violating my Fourth Amendment rights, and I will file a federal lawsuit. Reeves's jaw tightened. Are you threatening an officer? I'm not threatening. I'm informing you of the legal consequences of your actions. You're about to make a very expensive mistake. Several other library patrons had noticed the confrontation. Phones came out. People started recording. A woman at a nearby table spoke up. Officer, excuse me. I've been sitting here for 2 hours. That man hasn't done anything wrong. He's been reading quietly the whole time. This is inappropriate. Reeves didn't even look at her. Ma'am, stay out of this. Another patron, a man in his 60s, stood up. I'm a retired attorney. I've been watching this entire interaction. This officer has no legal basis to remove this gentleman. This is harassment. Reeves's hand moved to his handcuffs. Sir, I'm not going to ask again. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Marcus closed his laptop slowly. He placed his legal pad on top. Then he stood, keeping his hands visible. I'm complying under protest. Marcus said loudly, making sure his voice carried across the reading room. I am Marcus Webb, civil rights attorney. I've been sitting in this public library for 30 minutes reading case law. I've violated no law, no policy, no regulation. This officer is arresting me for reading while black. Everyone here is witnessing this. Please record it. At least 5 people were recording now. The library security cameras were capturing everything from multiple angles. Marcus turned around and placed his hands behind his back. Reeves grabbed his wrists roughly and snapped handcuffs on, deliberately tight. The metal dug into Marcus's skin. He winced but said nothing. You're under arrest for trespassing and obstruction. Trespassing in a public library? Obstruction by sitting quietly and reading? Officer Reeves, you just arrested a civil rights attorney who specializes in suing police departments for exactly this kind of constitutional violation. I've won $13 million in settlements over my career. You're about to be my next case. Reeves marched Marcus toward the elevator. Other patrons were standing now, phones out, recording everything. The woman who had spoken up earlier called out. This is wrong. He didn't do anything. Someone else shouted. His name is Marcus Webb. He's an attorney. Look him up. Reeves pushed Marcus into the elevator. As the doors closed, Marcus looked back at the reading room. He saw the phones recording. He saw the witnesses. He saw the evidence being documented. The case was already building itself. The elevator descended to the ground floor. Reeves walked Marcus through the main lobby. The circulation desk staff stared. Patrons turned to watch. A man in handcuffs being led out of a library for reading. Reeves guided Marcus outside to his patrol car. He opened the back door. Get in. Marcus ducked into the back seat. Cramped space, plastic seats, plexiglass windows, smell of disinfectant. Reeves got in front and picked up his radio. Dispatch, Unit 14. 1 in custody. Male, black, approximately 40 years old. Arrested for trespassing at Seattle Central Library. Transporting to West Precinct. The dispatcher's voice came back. Copy, Unit 14. What's the suspect's name? Reeves glanced back. What's your name? Marcus Webb. Spell that last name? W-E-B-B. The dispatcher paused. Unit 14, can you describe the nature of the trespassing? Suspect was loitering in the library reading room. Library staff called it in. Multiple complaints. Unit 14. Did you verify with library management that the suspect was actually trespassing or violating library policy? Do you think officers should verify complaints before making arrests in public spaces? Drop your answer. Reeves hesitated. Negative. Library staff reported it. That was sufficient. Unit 14, please stand by. Need to verify something. Reeves sat there, engine idling. In the back seat, Marcus sat perfectly still. He'd been in difficult situations before. He'd faced hostile judges, aggressive opposing counsel, threatening defendants. But this was different. This was being treated like a criminal for reading in a library. The radio crackled. Unit 14. I'm showing a Marcus Webb as a licensed attorney in Washington State. Civil rights practice. Multiple high-profile cases. You need to verify this arrest is legitimate before proceeding. Dispatch, the arrest is made. I responded to a complaint. I understand, but I'm advising you to return to the library and verify with management before transport. Confirm the suspect actually violated library policy. Reeves's face went pale. He sat staring at the steering wheel. Then he got out of the car and walked back into the library. Marcus watched through the window. He could see Reeves talking to library staff at the circulation desk. He could see Jennifer Hollis, the librarian who'd called it in, gesturing animatedly. He could see building security officer Chen shaking his head. 5 minutes passed. Reeves came back out, walking slower, shoulders slumped. He opened Marcus's door. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm going to release you." "A misunderstanding?" Marcus kept his voice level. "You arrested me for reading in a library. You handcuffed me in front of dozens of witnesses. You marched me out like a criminal. And now you're calling it a misunderstanding?" Reeves unlocked the handcuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists. Red marks circled them where the metal had pressed into skin. "Officer Reeves, what you just did is called a Fourth Amendment violation. Arrest without probable cause, false imprisonment, deprivation of civil rights under color of law. And I'm a civil rights attorney who's built my entire career on cases exactly like this. Sir, I was responding to a complaint. Library staff reported suspicious activity." "Suspicious activity? I was reading. Let me be very clear about what happened here. A librarian saw a black man sitting quietly with books and decided I was suspicious. She called you. You responded and immediately assumed I was criminal. You didn't verify the complaint. You didn't check library policy. You didn't ask library management. You just saw a black man and arrested him. That's racial profiling, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." Marcus pulled out his phone. He had recordings to collect, witnesses to contact, and a lawsuit to prepare. Reeves tried one more time. "Sir, if you'd just cooperated and left when asked to leave a public library for reading, that's not a lawful order. That's discrimination. And cooperation with unlawful orders isn't required." Marcus called his law partner. "James, it's Marcus. I was just arrested at Seattle Central Library for reading while black. I need you to get down here immediately. Collect witness statements. Get copies of all security footage. Contact the library administration and prepare a federal civil rights complaint. We're suing Seattle PD and the city of Seattle." Within 20 minutes, Marcus's law partner James Morrison arrived with 2 associates. Within 30 minutes, they'd collected statements from 7 witnesses who'd recorded the incident. Within an hour, they'd secured copies of security footage from 4 different camera angles showing everything. Marcus sitting quietly reading. Reeves approaching aggressively. The arrest without cause. The march through the library. Within 2 hours, the story was on local news. Civil rights attorney arrested at library for reading. The video footage was devastating. Marcus Webb, well-known civil rights attorney, sitting at a table with law books and a laptop, being handcuffed and arrested while witnesses protested and recorded. The story went viral immediately. Within 3 hours, 300,000 views. Within 6 hours, over 2 million. Within 24 hours, 8 million people had watched a black attorney being arrested for reading in a library. The comments section exploded. If a Harvard law graduate and civil rights attorney can be arrested for reading, no black person is safe. This is exactly why we need police reform. That officer had no idea who he was messing with. Marcus Webb has won millions in civil rights cases. Seattle PD is about to pay. Local legal community responded immediately. The Washington State Bar Association issued a statement condemning the arrest. The King County Bar Association called for an investigation. The ACLU announced they were monitoring the case. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund offered support. National civil rights organizations reached out. This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This was a prominent civil rights attorney being profiled and arrested while doing his job. The symbolism was powerful and damning. Seattle Police Department issued a statement that evening. "We are aware of an incident involving one of our officers and a member of the legal community. The matter is under investigation by our Office of Professional Accountability. We take all allegations seriously." The statement was careful, neutral, admission of nothing. It satisfied no one. By Wednesday morning, pressure was mounting. Seattle Mayor's office received hundreds of calls demanding accountability. City council members issued statements. Local media ran continuous coverage. Marcus's law firm held a press conference. Marcus stood at a podium with his partners beside him. "Yesterday, I was arrested at Seattle Central Library for the crime of reading while black. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've spent 18 years fighting police misconduct and racial profiling. I've won landmark cases establishing constitutional protections. And despite all of that, despite my education, my credentials, my experience, I was still handcuffed and arrested for sitting quietly in a library with law books." He paused. This arrest wasn't about loitering or library policy. It was about a librarian who saw a black man and decided I was suspicious. It was about an officer who responded and immediately assumed I was criminal. It was about a system that allows officers with 16 complaints to remain on patrol. It was about institutional racism that criminalizes black people for existing in public spaces. Another pause. I'm filing a federal lawsuit. Not for revenge, not for money, for accountability, for reform, for every black person who's been profiled, harassed, and arrested for living their lives. The press conference ended with Marcus answering questions. When asked about damages, he said, "This isn't about a settlement. This is about changing a system." When asked about Officer Reeves, he said, "Officer Reeves is a symptom. The disease is a department that tolerates officers with patterns of racial bias. Should officers with 10+ complaints be automatically removed from patrol?" Comment below. Seattle PD Office of Professional Accountability launched an investigation immediately. Senior investigator Lieutenant Sarah Kim was assigned. Kim was a 16-year veteran known for thorough investigations and unwillingness to tolerate misconduct. She pulled Officer Reeves's complete personnel file. 9 years, 16 complaints, 12 alleging racial profiling or excessive force, 6 sustained. The pattern was undeniable. Kim watched security footage from the library, 4 camera angles showing everything. Marcus sitting quietly, reading, taking notes. Reeves approaching aggressively, hand near weapon. Marcus explaining he was an attorney, offering identification. Reeves dismissing everything, making arrest. Witnesses protesting. Phones recording. Kim interviewed the witnesses. All 7 told the same story. Marcus was sitting quietly reading. He wasn't disturbing anyone. The arrest was completely unjustified. Several witnesses specifically mentioned Marcus explaining he was an attorney and offering credentials. Reeves arrested him anyway. Kim interviewed library staff. Building Security Officer Chen was direct. "The librarian who called you racially profiled that gentleman. He wasn't doing anything wrong. I told her that. She called police anyway. I tried to stop this." Kim interviewed Jennifer Hollis, the librarian who made the call. Hollis was defensive. He looked suspicious. He didn't look like he belonged there. Kim pressed. What specifically did he do that was suspicious? Hollis couldn't articulate anything. He just had a look. What look? You know, like he was up to something. Kim made a note. Racial profiling, clear and documented. She pulled statistical data on Reeves's stops, searches, and arrests over his 9-year career. Black residents stopped at rates 4.1 times higher than department average. Hispanic residents 3.3 times higher. Searches of black motorists 4.8 times higher. Use of force against people of color 3.7 times higher. Every statistical measure told the same story. Daniel Reeves was an officer whose policing was driven entirely by racial bias. Kim's investigation report was 52 pages. Officer Daniel Reeves violated department policy, state law, and federal constitutional rights. He arrested Marcus Webb without probable cause. He failed to verify the complaint before making arrest. He ignored witness statements confirming Webb's legitimate presence. He refused to verify Webb's credentials despite repeated offers. He used unnecessary force with tight handcuffs. The arrest was motivated by racial bias. Reeves observed a black man in a public space and immediately assumed criminal activity. He made no attempt to verify legitimacy despite Webb's professional appearance, calm demeanor, and clear explanation. This pattern is consistent with Reeves's career. Analysis shows 16 complaints, 12 alleging racial profiling. Statistical analysis shows Reeves stops, searches, and uses force against people of color at rates dramatically higher than department averages. Officer Reeves's continued employment poses direct threat to public safety and community trust. Recommended immediate termination. Seattle Police Chief Adrian Martinez read the report over a weekend, watched all videos, reviewed statistics. Monday morning he made his decision. Officer Daniel Reeves was fired. Termination letter was delivered by Lieutenant Kim. 6 pages listing every violation. Conclusion clear. Officer Daniel Reeves is terminated from Seattle Police Department, effective immediately for violation of department policy. Sparser, violation of constitutional rights, unlawful arrest, pattern of racially biased policing, spanning entire career. This decision is final and not subject to appeal. Reeves's name was entered into National Decertification Index. At 36, his law enforcement career was over. He hired attorney Ronald Chen, who specialized in defending police officers. Chen reviewed the case, watched library security footage from 4 angles, read Marcus Webb's credentials, reviewed 16 complaint history, read statistical analysis showing clear racial bias, read Kim's 52-page report. Chen called Reeves. "Dan, I'm going to be honest. This is indefensible. You arrested a Harvard-educated civil rights attorney for reading in a library. It's on video from multiple angles. Witnesses recorded everything. Your personnel file shows 16 complaints with clear racial bias pattern. Department has ironclad termination case. And you arrested possibly the worst person you could have. Marcus Webb has won $13 million in civil rights settlements. He knows this area of law better than anyone. He's going to destroy you in court. What should happen to librarians who racially profile patrons? Let me know below. Chen's advice was clear. Withdraw appeal, stay quiet, don't speak to media, pay attention, moves on. Reeves withdrew, but Marcus Webb wasn't finished. The lawsuit was filed 8 weeks after the arrest. Marcus's firm prepared a complaint that was 41 pages long. Fourth Amendment violation, arrest without probable cause, false imprisonment and false arrest. 14th Amendment violation, denial of equal protection. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law, 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, assault and battery through use of handcuffs, violation of Washington State Civil Rights Act, municipal liability for failure to train officers on racial bias, municipal liability for failure to supervise officers with documented patterns, municipal liability for negligent retention of officer with 16 complaints over 9 years, named Officer Daniel Reeves individually and City of Seattle, demanded compensatory damages, punitive damages, policy reforms, consent decree with federal oversight. City Attorney's Office and insurance carrier brought in outside counsel, defense firm specializing in law enforcement cases. They spent 3 days reviewing everything. Videos from 4 library cameras, body camera footage, witness statements from 7 people with recordings, Marcus Webb's credentials and reputation, Officer Reeves's 16 complaint history, statistical evidence of racial bias, Kim's 52-page investigation. Their conclusion was unanimous. This case is catastrophic. We have a Harvard Law civil rights attorney arrested for reading. Videos show everything. 7 witnesses with recordings. Officer has 16 complaints over 9 years with documented racial bias pattern. Plaintiff is one of the region's most respected civil rights lawyers who's won $13 million in similar cases. If this goes to trial, verdict could be $8 to $12 million. City's insurance carrier agreed. Policy limit is $10 million. This goes to trial. We're looking at verdict that exceeds our coverage. Strongly recommend immediate settlement negotiations. City agreed. Settlement talks began 6 months after lawsuit filed. Marcus's team opened with demand. $7.5 million compensatory and punitive damages plus comprehensive reforms, including consent decree with federal monitoring. City countered $1.8 million, no admission of wrongdoing, no policy commitments. Marcus's team didn't budge. They explained what trial would look like. We'll call every person Officer Reeves stopped, searched, or arrested in 9 years. That's over 250 witnesses establishing pattern. We'll present statistical analysis showing his clear racial bias. We'll call expert witnesses on constitutional policing who'll testify Reeves violated every standard. We'll have Harvard law professors testify about Fourth Amendment. We'll make this a month-long trial with national media coverage. CNN, MSNBC, NPR in courtroom every day. And when jury returns verdict, it'll make national headlines because a Harvard Law civil rights attorney was arrested for reading. City raised offered $3.2 million. Marcus's team held firm at $7.5 million. Negotiations stalled. Then Department of Justice Civil Rights Division announced they were opening pattern and practice investigation into Seattle PD. Investigation would examine whether department engaged in systemic racial discrimination. Changed everything. City couldn't fight federal lawsuit while under DOJ investigation. They needed this resolved. Final offer, $3.8 million. Comprehensive policy reforms, agreement to cooperate with DOJ investigation. Marcus caucused with his partners. It wasn't the full amount they demanded, but it was substantial. And more importantly, reforms and DOJ cooperation would create lasting change. They accepted. Settlement announced at joint press conference. $3.8 million paid to Marcus Webb, one of the largest settlements for wrongful arrest in Washington state history, plus mandatory reforms. Annual mandatory training on racial bias for all officers conducted by independent experts. Early intervention system flagging any officer with 5 complaints in 3 years. Independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power and disciplinary authority. Officers must verify complaints with property managers before arrests on private or public property. All arrests must be reviewed by supervisor within 12 hours. Quarterly statistical analysis of stops, searches, arrests by race and officer. Any officer showing disparities over 2.0 times department average triggers automatic investigation. Federal monitoring for 3 years. Annual public reporting of all complaints and discipline. Do you think $3.8 million is enough for being arrested for reading? Comment your thoughts. Marcus issued statement. This settlement represents accountability, but money alone doesn't create change. What matters are the reforms, the oversight, the commitment to addressing systemic racism. I was arrested because a librarian racially profiled me and an officer with 16 complaints assumed I was criminal. That can't happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone. Reporter asked about the money. Marcus answered, I'm donating $1.5 million to organizations providing legal aid to people of color who experience police misconduct. I'm using $1 million to establish a civil rights fellowship at University of Washington Law School for students who want to pursue police accountability work. The remaining $1.3 million covers my legal fees and compensates me for the trauma of being handcuffed in front of colleagues and community for reading. DOJ investigation into Seattle PD took 18 months, analyzed 60,000 stops over 8 years, reviewed thousands of body cameras, interviewed 250 officers and community members, released 178-page report. Seattle Police Department engaged in pattern of conduct violating 4th and 14th Amendments. Officers stopped people of color at rates significantly disproportionate to population. Black residents stopped 3.8 times higher rate. Hispanic residents 3.1 times higher. Asian residents 1.9 times higher. Disparities cannot be explained by crime rates or legitimate factors, constitute racial discrimination. Searches of people of color occur at dramatically higher rates despite lower contraband recovery. Use of force disproportionately deployed against people of color. Complaint system inadequate. Complaints from communities of color routinely dismissed. Officers with clear bias patterns not disciplined or removed. Supervision inadequate to identify and address problem officers. Seattle PD entered consent decree with DOJ. 104 pages, legally binding, federal oversight 5 years. Any officer with 8 sustained complaints must be removed from patrol pending review. Any officer with 5 complaints in 2 years triggers mandatory intervention. All stops must be based on reasonable suspicion or probable cause clearly articulated. All searches must be based on probable cause or valid consent. Body cameras mandatory for all uniformed officers. Footage reviewed regularly. Enhanced training, 60 hours annually on constitutional policing. De-escalation, implicit bias. Independent civilian oversight board with full investigative and disciplinary authority. Quarterly statistical analysis with public reporting. Federal monitor with complete access and authority to report noncompliance. Seattle City Council held hearing on consent decree. Marcus testified, "What happened to me was not unique. It was documented. Thousands of people of color in Seattle experience profiling, harassment, unlawful stops every year. Most don't have Harvard law degrees. Most don't have resources to sue. Most suffer in silence. That's why this consent decree matters. It's not punishment. It's accountability. It's a blueprint for constitutional policing. It's protection for communities that have been targeted for too long. Consent decree approved unanimously. Seattle library case became national training example. DOJ uses library footage in civil rights training. Police academies show video as example of what not to do. Law schools teach case in constitutional law. One wrongful arrest at a library led to fired officer, $3.8 million settlement, comprehensive reforms, federal consent decree. Daniel Reeves never worked law enforcement again. Decertification index made him unemployable. Tried private security. Fired when employer learned his history. Tried retail loss prevention. Quit after being recognized by customers. Moved to different state. Works construction under different name. Gave one interview before leaving Seattle. Reporter asked, "Do you believe you were wrong to arrest Marcus Webb?" Reeves answered, "I was responding to a complaint. Following procedures." Reporter pressed, "You arrested an attorney for reading, on video from 4 angles, with 7 witnesses saying he did nothing wrong, after he explained who he was. How is that following procedure?" Reeves stood and left without answering. Marcus Webb continued his civil rights practice. The arrest didn't slow him down. If anything, it strengthened his resolve. He's filed 6 more police misconduct cases since, winning 4 so far. Total settlements now exceed $18 million. He speaks at conferences about his experience. Shows the library video. Explains how even credentials, education, professional status don't protect you from racial profiling, but also how documentation, witnesses, and legal knowledge create accountability. He teaches his law students, record everything, know your rights, never accept injustice as inevitable, challenge it, document it, fight it. The library security footage is still available. You can watch it yourself. Marcus Webb, Harvard law graduate, former federal prosecutor, civil rights attorney, sitting quietly at a table with law books and laptop, being arrested for reading. You can see Officer Reeves approach aggressively. You can see Marcus explain calmly who he is. You can see Reeves dismiss everything and make arrest anyway. You can see witnesses protesting and recording. You can see evidence of racial profiling playing out in real time. What's your biggest takeaway from this story? Drop it in the comments. Marcus's story matters because it proves that racism targets everyone, regardless of education or status. Harvard law degree, 18 years legal experience, $13 million in won cases, none of it protected him from being arrested for reading while black. Think about everyone without those credentials. Everyone who gets profiled, stopped, arrested without witnesses or recordings or legal knowledge to fight back. Everyone whose story doesn't make news because they're not prominent attorneys. Marcus's story also proves accountability is possible. Officer with 16 complaints finally fired. City paid $3.8 million. DOJ forced comprehensive reforms. System changed not because it wanted to, but because Marcus refused to accept injustice. If this opened your eyes to how racial profiling operates in everyday spaces, subscribe. We're bringing stories that challenge, inform, demand accountability. Share with someone who needs to understand what racial bias looks like. Not theories or statistics, but concrete reality captured on library cameras. Hit subscribe. Drop comment. What reforms matter most? How do we prevent the next Officer Reeves? How do we protect people just trying to read, work, live their lives in public spaces? These questions matter because this isn't just Seattle or Reeves or Marcus. It's about every community where black and brown people are criminalized for existing. It's about whether we accept systems that protect racist officers or demand systems that protect the people they're supposed to serve. Thanks for watching this story. If it changed how you think about racial profiling and police accountability, you've learned something important today. Now take it further, share it, discuss it, demand better from your community institutions. Change happens when we refuse accepting anything less than justice.
Every historical record holds a profound story waiting to be carefully uncovered. Every story we explore is a deliberate step closer to the ultimate truth. Thank you for joining us on this vital journey of discovery today.